It's another day of the off season for the Colorado Avalanche. AJ Rudo, Megan coming to you live. Look, the reality is there are only 2 teams left in the playoffs from the Western Conference, and that might not be that far from one team being left. Do you think either one of those teams, Vegas, Dallas, are in for major changes this summer? Because I feel like Vegas is, to some extent, they have to just continue dealing with their own cap help. Right. There's
Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Can you guys hear us now? Hello?
Testing?
Maybe.
1, 2.
Well, I don't know how long the delay is on YouTube, so I don't know when.
Yeah, right. Well, how long is it? How long do we find out?
It's not looking good.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a wave of people saying they can.
Early returns aren't great.
All right, it says better. I see a yay.
It's like when you're watching election night coverage and it's like 2% precincts reporting and somebody's got like a
Chad,
75%
do you hear
lead or
an
whatever.
echo?
You're just like, ugh.
Votes are 307 to 12.
All right. So anyway, we can just kind of start over then.
Yeah, welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. AJ Rudo, Megan. Today, talking about. Oh, it's bad echo too, huh? Cool. All right, we can keep waiting.
You guys watched the Nuggets game last night?
Yep. It was fun.
It was fun.
Good time.
Especially because we had already laid out, hey, the Nuggets were going to have to come back in this game to fit the script.
And then they did.
And that's, well, and it just happened so fast.
Yep. They were down 15 at the half. And then they were leading at the end of the
Yeah, and they opened up the third quarter with a 24-8 to run, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, that's gone now.
I won a good amount of money on that game.
How about
too.
now, chat?
How do we sound now?
Surely it's
Testing,
fixed
testing.
now.
Hopefully.
Jedi Council.
I'm
I don't
not
know
hearing
what
an
that
echo.
means.
I'm hearing you guys, but
I grant you the rank of Jedi, but not the rank of Master.
see, I was thinking more like the council, like I am the Senate. That would be more my thought. But
Yeah, I identify more as a Sith Lord.
I don't get this joke.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I just don't
Oh,
get
for
it.
sure.
come
There's
on,
no
chat, tell
like
me.
the Sith powers are just objectively better. Like,
Good. Boy, sorry guys.
all right, we go again.
Sick.
I'll cut
Let's let's have a third shot at this.
Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. AJ Rudo, Megan. We're talking Western Conference. We're talking the Avs competition in the West. Specifically, AJ, you were starting us off with the Dallas and Vegas conversation, and if any of these teams have any changes.
Yeah,
coming
I was
up.
asking you guys if you thought that they were like Vegas is going to have to hemorrhage some talent because of salary cap stuff, but
Yep.
I don't feel like Dallas is in for any major changes. I see a lot of Stars fans just after how the series has started wanting to buy out Ryan Suter.
That's a rough. Yeah.
Yeah, how interesting would it be if Ryan Suter ended up being paid to play
Multiple
paid by 3
buyouts,
teams
yeah.
next year? 'Cause he got
Wait,
paid by
is that-
Minnesota and Dallas to go away, and then you know that somebody would pay him.
Would the Avs do it as like a sixth?
I mean, Ryan Suter and Josh Manson is your third
You know what
pairing.
I'm saying. Wouldn't hate it.
It probably sounds better on paper because of who those guys have been in their careers.
Compared to who they are now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you're like, Ryan Suter and Josh Manson, that would be fun. But I don't know, maybe I don't know. I was just saying it's a thing that I've seen a lot of, but when I look at their cap sheet, it does not feel like they are in for a major change.
I want to get to Vegas in a second, so let's stick with Dallas here. Regardless of how playoffs go, Megan, is Dallas the Avs' main competition, at least in the Central, going forward?
I mean, Minnesota was in there at times, Winnipeg in there at times. I don't know. I think it still remains Dallas for now, but
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's Dallas for next year.
And then after that, we'll see.
After that, it's really hard to project because, as we're going to talk about, some of these teams could be facing some serious changes in the next few years. You look at between St. Louis, Nashville, Minnesota, and Winnipeg. I'm like, those are all teams that are all facing serious question marks over the next few years of what direction are you going to pick?
Yeah.
St. Louis and Nashville have 5 first-round picks between them this year. So, like, there's some,
If they do.
And then you have 2 bottom feeders who would like to compete at some point in Arizona and Chicago, where you're like,
Certainly Chicago
How long
would like to
until-
do it a whole lot faster now.
yeah, and Arizona's is going to be a little tougher a sell just with their situation
They've
right
got
now.
other problems.
I think a lack of clarity on the arena stuff makes it really tough for them. So I would say I would agree with Megan. I think it's Dallas for right now, but they're going to have to do work to keep up because Colorado's just natural advantage is they have Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar all signed.
And I do agree. I think it's Dallas right now, but you're still kind of looking at Dallas's roster and you're going, well, sure, they have these guys signed, but the cliff will eventually come for Joe Pavelski.
Well, and you wonder how sustainable is what Jamie Benn gave them this year. At 33, are we seeing a revival, or is this just a one-shot wonder? Is it, and then like you do see some of the younger guys, the Ty Dellandres and Wyatt Johnston.
Yep.
You expect them to take steps forward, but are they going to take substantial steps forward to replace steps back from the elderly guys here? So we'll see, but they should be good.
I think you're right. I don't think dramatic changes are incoming, and I do think there's enough youth to look forward to in Dallas and Robertson and the Dellandrea, Wyatt Johnson types, and even Miro Heiskanen on that side of things, that they're going to stay pretty competitive. There are just some question marks surrounding some of the aging players in Sagan, Ben, and what Pavelski has left in the tank. Because even looking at this season, that was a question of how much does Joe Pavelski have left in him, and there's definitely still something there, but I think that's why it's easy to point to Dallas as remaining competitive for a little bit. Vegas in a similar conversation, but they are not able to make huge roster changes, so they're not really able to improve dramatically, but they do have a lot of good things in place currently as well. There's just been a really weird thing that's happened with their goaltending that you hope resolves itself, because they're pretty handcuffed to that for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if those guys get healthy, like they've paid guys, like Robin Leonard,
Yep. That's just
if he gets healthy, like
money that's sitting dead
like,
for them right now. Yeah.
Like right now, they're getting to spend that money because these guys are hurt, but they've given money to Robin Leonard, and I guess technically Logan Thompson. It was barely any.
A lot more to Leonard than Thompson there. Yeah.
So that's not going to hurt them in any way. I think that'll be a value deal for them because I think Logan Thompson's awesome.
Yeah.
As much as Jesse's a hater, I think that kid's really good.
It's funny too. He'll like look at his career trajectory, and each year he spent very little time at every league, and excelled in each place. It wasn't like he was some bottom feeder in the East Coast League for years and finally broke through. Mm-hmm. Anyways,
he's really good.
I don't mean to sidetrack.
I
Jesse,
mean, it's an important conversation because I'm not 100% sure where Vegas's goalie situation ends up. When Leonard gets healthy, what do they
Hill's
look to
pricing
do?
himself out of there.
Right, he's on his way out. Leonard hasn't been healthy for 18 months. When he gets healthy, who is he? Does Vegas even want to keep
Does he
him?
ever get healthy?
Right.
I mean, is that just LTIR money forever?
Right, it could be. Compared to Dallas, where despite some sketchiness in these playoffs, Jake Ottinger's the guy there. There's no doubt about that.
right?
And at $4 million, it's a reasonable amount to expect for, that's a reasonable price for him to be like, hey, you don't have to work very hard to be worth it.
Yep. If you give us a 918, you're easily making your money.
You're pretty happy there.
So goalie situations, kind of their own specific thing when it comes to hockey teams at times.
So the top of the West feels like it's going to be pretty relatively stable.
Colorado, Dallas, and then Vegas coming from the Pacific.
Yeah. Well, and then you look at like in LA where,
if they could stop running into Edmonton in the first round.
well, like you feel like they're going to be a playoff team no matter what they do. They're going to be right there in that mix. They're just too good to take like a major step back, I think. But, I know this is the point of today's show, but when we talk about the Flames, you talk about the Oilers, like those are two teams that have to make really hard financial decisions this summer.
The thing with LA is that I don't know that they have to make huge decisions, but they can only sit around and wait for so long for a guy like Byfield to figure it out. And I know Byfield had an okay year.
Right, but I mean, they used the second overall pick on this guy.
Yeah.
Like they're asking Quentin Byfield to be more than a left wing in their top six. Like they want that guy to break out and be a star for them.
Yep.
Because the difference between those is what we saw from LA this year. And if he were to break out, especially as a center,
it would be
having
pretty big boon to them.
Well, having Byfield, Kopitar, and Deneau down the middle gives you hilariously enviable center depth.
Yeah, and starts to have a built-in replacement for Kopitar as he ages out of his
you
career.
can put him into
Yeah.
a little more of an appropriate situation where you could protect him. You're not asking him to be the star that he has been his whole Kings tenure.
Another team that I do wonder about in goal.
LA?
Yeah, as
100%.
Yeah.
Huge question marks. Copley, is Korpisalo, did they re-sign him?
Is Cal Peterson just done? I mean,
well, he just kind of disappeared. Like,
it's what,
obviously
$4
had a bad
million that's just
year,
sitting
but
in the AHL right now, like, it's a problem. They've got to figure that out. And I sent out a tweet the other day that had floated the idea that the Kings were talking about moving on from Arvidsson so they could try and find the money to potentially keep either Gavrikov or Korpisalo, which I think they can't keep both, but keeping one of them would help.
I don't know how you feel confident about keeping Corpy after that playoff series, man.
Yeah. It just finished so poorly.
Yep.
It did. And it was tough because, like, a opposite of Edmonton, I was like, I don't think this is so bad, but it's just because Edmonton didn't really have reliable goaltending either that I think it was a tough showing for Korpisalo.
It was a little bit of watching them trade bad goals back and forth.
No, exactly.
For
I was like,
sure.
well, that was a good save from Korpisalo, and then he'd give up something. I was like, well, it's Edmonton. Maybe that's fine.
Until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't.
It is interesting to see where
and I think the goaltending position is maybe the most fascinating part of the entire Western Conference.
I agree.
Because when we look at the Central Division, you look at the Minnesota Wild.
Yep.
Philip Gustafson just gave them an awesome season for $750K. there is a 0% chance that he signs for that cheaply again.
And there's a really low chance that he repeats the year he just had
So
to. Not that he isn't a
need,
good goalie.
you're going to need
but-
to find some kind of middle ground, on a deal there. But they don't have the wiggle room to just be like, well, you got to give that guy $3 million. Like, they need to make hard decisions.
Yep.
They're losing Matt Dumba just right off that defense.
He's gone.
Like,
Yeah.
Exactly.
boom,
Yeah,
gone.
because they have big decisions to make defensively too.
Yeah.
That it's hard in both position. You don't really want to make any shortcuts.
And like all of the forward depth that they traded for at the deadline, except for Mojo, is a free agent. And so, like, the things that propelled them forward and made them actually
All
look a
come
little scarier going
grinding
into
to
the
a halt.
postseason.
Yeah.
They can't repeat. So they're in such a tough spot too, where you look at, I think it should start with goaltending this year, because so many of the playoff contending teams out west have major goaltending problems.
Just about everyone except for except for Dallas.
It's the weird, Dallas and Colorado are two teams that are just like, we're not even going to talk about this position.
Yep.
Winnipeg's in a tough spot in that
Yep.
they want to keep their goaltender,
Yeah.
but can they?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you have Nashville. Is UC Saros arguably the best Nashville Predator right now? He's in his prime. He's on a cheap contract. He's coming off an exceptionally good season. He's strung together several in a row now that are very good. I finally get to be right about UC Saros. Suck it, Rudo. And there should be a real conversation with a prospect the caliber of Yaroslav
That's
Askarov.
Nashville's problem, yeah.
Is it maybe, should they be trying to pluck a Quentin Byfield out of LA for UC Saros? Like, should they be trying to...
I don't know if Byfield's the one I would target,
Well,
but I
and
get what you're saying. I get what you're
Yeah,
saying.
LA
This
would
isn't-
really benefit from this.
I'm using this as an example. Should they be calling Seattle and saying, give us Shane Wright
Boy, that'd be fun.
to try and get the next generation kickstarted a little bit and say, hey, we'll take Grubauer back.
Just to take the money.
Yeah, so we even some money out here, and so while we can stay
and he can be a
competitive, but
serviceable fill-in until Askarov's ready.
But
and-
Askarov will eventually, the money will even out because his ELC, he'll be cheap. And then he'll eventually ascend to that job, and Grubauer will be an expensive backup at the end of his deal. Like, is that something they should be entertaining? And
Probably.
you take the UC Saros conversation and you copy and paste it in Winnipeg with Connor Hellebuck. And you say, these are two teams whose best players are arguably their goaltenders. And for different reasons, I think should strongly be entertaining moving them. Maybe not yet for Nashville, because they might want to see a little more of Askarov in the NHL specifically.
yeah, it's tough because
So it might be a year early for them, but I think they should be looking at that market, and they should be keeping a very close eye on what happens with Connor Hellebuck, because if Hellebuck gets dealt, that sets the market for UC Saros of, here's a framework for us to immediately work off of.
Nashville's also in a weird place, but I do want to talk about them more in a little bit. First, if you're a goalie and you've been run into and it's not your fault, maybe you should call Bacchus and Shanker. Dial 222-2222 today to get a hold of Bacchus and Shanker, or go to coloradolaw.net. If you've been injured in a car accident, even if it was a rideshare situation where you weren't driving or you were biking on the side of the road, or if you were at work and an accident happened that's not your fault, they will give you a free consultation. You can pitch your case to them. If they think you have a case, they'll take it on for completely free. It costs you nothing until you win your case with Bacchus and Shanker. And even then, they just take it from the winnings. So nothing comes out of your pocket when it comes to these guys. They just want to get you what you deserve, and they're really, really good at it because they've been doing it for over 25 years, and they've won over $1 billion for their clients over the years. So they know their way around the courtroom. We'll put it that way. They know how to get you what you've earned. Go check them out again at coloradolaw.net, or press 2 for a while.
Saw they had a advertisement on the back of a truck yesterday that I was sitting behind as I drove home, and was like, these dudes are legit, man.
It's one of
It's
those.
one thing to advertise on podcasts and stuff, but you just got your own trucks rolling around town.
It's one of those things where, like,
Please.
this is how I know Denver's becoming a big city. is because you would go to Vegas or you'd go to LA or whatever, and you'd see trucks just driving around as advertisements.
Oh, yeah.
That never used to be a thing in Denver, but now
Yeah.
it's happening.
Was it like a truck with a wrap advertisement or like almost like a billboard moving
It was a wrap.
wrap? Okay. Still very cool.
Not
but
full Vegas.
I'm thinking
yeah.
Vegas.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, where it's a literal billboard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just on a
I've-
truck
I've
bed.
seen both.
Yeah.
Both are cool. Just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify. There's also like a custom light we have upstairs for Bacchus and Schenker, and I don't know what they're called. The neon lights that you see like in Nashville. We have one for Bacchus and Schenker.
Sick. Boy, we got to get one of those on the set.
Yeah, it's upstairs in the studio that's being remodeled,
Oh,
so we
there
need
you
to bring
go.
it down.
There you go. Boxes and Shank are looking good in the neon.
Anyway, that's how you know they're legit.
Yeah, for real.
If the $1 billion wasn't enough.
Also brought to you by Illegal Pete's. When you get that cash, you can go get yourself a delicious burrito, fresh ingredients, 10 different locations here in Colorado. Queso to die for, Margs at happy hour from 3 to 6 p.m. that everybody loves. It's the place to go. There's one just a couple blocks down from the DNVR bar where you can get your own delicious burrito. That's a that means AJ's going there as soon as this pod is over.
Yeah, I might, man.
It is lunchtime.
It's one of those things that I consider when I leave here.
Yeah. Just roll on by.
Yeah.
Grab some lunch.
We'll walk down and get it and then walk back to
Yeah.
parking on Colfax. So,
Go check them out. Illegal Pete's. There's also a location in Arizona if you happen to be from the desert down there. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I did want to dig in. I mean, we're talking about Nashville anyway, so let's just talk about them.
sure.
Because you're talking about this move in goal with Saros and Askarov. Nashville's problem is they are locked into a lot of guys.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Roman Josi, Philip Forsberger signed long term. You have, I think, 3 more years of Matt Duchene and 2 more years of Ryan Johansson.
3 or 4 more years of McDonough, too, I think, on the defensive end.
I think it's 3 more years of McDonough. Like, you're signed.
Yep.
You're committed at high dollar values. You're committed to a lot of these
Contracts
guys.
that are hard to move.
Yeah, and you're having a real conversation of for what? To what end here?
Yeah.
This is where I see the value in what you're proposing and using Saros as a possible asset for a young, promising return. Is I think they need a refresh in that aspect. I think we saw in St. Louis when the core begins to age, if you don't have a young core coming up behind them, you run into problems.
You have nothing,
Your
yeah.
20 goal scorers, they need people coming up behind them because it's just those are the types of career years that are not always repeatable, and you just need young players coming up in the ranks. And I think that's where Nashville is struggling a little bit and where they could use somewhat of a refresh.
Yeah, I definitely they have some interesting young forwards on the way because they've devoted a lot of their draft assets to that position.
But for a team that 5 years ago was the best defense in the league, arguably.
Right. I mean, for a team that years ago, comfortably just gave PK Subban to New Jersey
Yep.
for free. It was like a 2nd round pick and some stuff.
Yep.
Just gave them away because their defense was that good, and they were like, we could survive this, no problem. And I know PK had obviously slipped at that point. His game he was no longer that guy anymore, but to just give a guy like that away, that was the quality of their defense. And now you're looking at it in Roman Josi and Ryan McDonough.
It's kind of it. And Fabro,
Fabro.
depending on how
Fabro's
you
there.
feel
I
about
really
him.
like Alexander Carrier. I will fight you on this.
I'm
over
fine.
and over.
I'm fine with it. I just never think he's going to get there to where I'm happy.
Well, the
but
thing is that he's not going to be a top pairing guy. I can like him as much as I want, or as much as I like in the middle of a defense. But
fair.
how much of an impact guy is he? Or is he just one of the many, many, many third pairing guys where I'm like, I like what he can do in a limited role, It's different when you're talking about, does this guy move the needle on a lineup here? How good actually is he? And then the guys beyond that are just, there's not a lot there.
Yep.
And that's where you have the conversation of, if you wanted to find, there's no reason for them to mess with Ryan McDonough. They should try and find a buyer for him in the next 2 years.
As
That
soon
money
as
might
possible,
be tough this year,
yeah.
but next year when the cap goes up the way that we expect it to, it will go up enough that McDonough's salary should be a little easier to fold in and not have quite as much term on it if the play slips a lot. They should really be finding something for him. But if they do move, a Saros, or if they do want to move on from a Ryan Johansson, 2 years left at $8 million for a guy that does not consistently score 20 goals, it's going to be a hard sell. But
Yeah.
with 2 years, if you're talking about the willingness to retain a little bit of that, even if it's $2 million, like they're not competing for a Stanley Cup. And with Barry Trotz taking over as GM, we don't really know how aggressive he's going to be in trying to make it work with this aged out core that maxed out, to be honest with you, last year when they got smoked by the Avs in the first round.
Yeah, and that's the problem is I don't see the talent on how they can push to be a true cup contender.
Right, like you could easily view them as a team that replaces Winnipeg as the last wild card team next season.
Sure, but where does that get them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why would you continue to push and spend money for that?
It's tough.
And I think
Not
Yossi
a
and
spot I'm
Forsberg,
envious of, yeah.
Yossi and Forsberg are homegrown, been there their whole careers. Those are their guys. They're going to retire there. They're going to get their jerseys retired. They're going to go into the rafters.
I think Yossi will. Forsberg could try and chase a cup.
With that contract, it's done, man. I hear you. Maybe at the end of that contract, we'll see,
last year or two is.
I think they're going to say those are our cats. Those are our guys. We're just gonna keep them as franchise guys. All the other guys though on that roster should really be up for play. And if Colorado wants to sniff around that to make this kind of Avs related, you'd have to have some kind of an interest in a Yakov Trenin at $1.7 million.
The thing is, I think it's tough for them to do a lot of this offseason. It's probably next offseason that you see them really get aggressive with a lot of this stuff.
Well, I don't know. That's the thing. I just don't know. They've got 2 first-round picks. Like, this is just a good time for them but with the change at GM, I don't know.
Yeah.
Barry Trotz could decide to go
could just
like Kyle Davidson in Chicago and just say,
winter. Yeah.
we're giving away all these guys. We're going to get all the assets that we can for as many of these cats as we can. And we're just we'll keep Yossi and Forsberg, but we're going to build. We're going to try and do what LA did, which is rebuild quickly enough around so many assets that as Kopitar and Doughty got older, they got to compete in a second window.
Yeah.
I think if I was Barry Trotz, that's what I would be doing.
Okay.
I would be trying to follow what LA did, and they've got multiple firsts this year, and maybe they give away enough talent that they're like bad next year and have an actual high pick. But I would be trying to do that and try and get it so that by the end of Forsberg and Yossi's careers, they were part of a second potential run.
A lot easier said than done.
Oh, of course.
I do want to go through the rest of the Central here. We'll start at the bottom. Chicago and Arizona. Not expecting them to be all that competitive. Do we think they'll at least be fun this year?
I think Arizona will be fun. Okay, and honestly, Chicago with Bedard.
There will be exactly one player that's fun on Chicago.
That has to be some amount of fun. Then there's fun little storylines in Chicago. Gold Cutman gets healthy. He had a pretty good, promising start. Does he get another chance up with the big team now that he's going to be healthy for the regular season? I don't know. But Arizona, I think, will be fun. We talk about the magic of Mullet Arena and sort of knowing this is the last season playing in Mullet, I think could bring about some fun, especially home games.
I hope it's fun. Don't think they'll be all that competitive on the bigger picture, but I hope it's fun at least.
Well, because of some of the uncertainty, I could see some of the players that you look to and count on, like the Clayton Keller types, that affecting the uncertainty of the future, affecting their regular season performance.
Well, when we talked to Craig last week and we talked about Nick Schmaltz, and he said they've got to balance this.
Yeah.
Because if they move Nick Schmaltz, It's going to piss off Clayton Keller. And that's a guy that you're invested in trying to keep happy.
Yep.
But Nick Schmaltz is also, his salary will be higher than his AAV over the next few years. Whereas
So when it comes to actual cash,
his actual cash is going up for a team that is still trying to use LTIR contracts to hit the floor.
Yep.
Because cash flow is a problem down there. So, you know, that's watching them walk that tightrope and that balance. You know, I'm excited to see what's next for Matias Michelli.
Sure.
I'm excited to see, you know, does Josh Doan make the team? Does some of the younger kids start to break in and actually be a part of this?
Can Barrett Hayton have another solid season?
Yeah,
Vanalka.
what's up
Yeah.
with
The
Barrett
goaltender of the
Hayton?
future.
Should they seriously? We're talking about all these goaltending problems out west. Should they be auctioning off Karel Vejmelka this
For,
right now?
$10 million.
Arizona has a good track record for providing good goaltenders, but maybe their track record and what they do with their return leaves a little
Not
bit
so good.
to be desired.
Not so good on the controlling the return.
Yeah.
Connor Timmins makes them look
Giving
real
Connor
bad.
Timmins
Yeah.
away, man. That's dumb.
Toronto, if you don't want him,
He's welcome back in Colorado. Absolutely, he would be a really fun sixth.
Yeah, if
for
you're
the
not even gonna
Avs.
use him.
Yeah,
And 1.1 for the next 2 years. Yeah,
at least for the 30 games that he actually plays would be fun. Okay, moving up the list, we kind of already talked about Nashville, St. Louis.
what the hell do you do?
You're stuck with Binnington in the net
You
for
might
the next
lose your
forever.
GM to the Maple Leafs.
You're stuck with a number of aging defensemen that play a game that historically does not age well. Offensive defensemen usually fall off pretty fast when they age out. And then you kind of just have a bunch of guys on your forward core now that O'Reilly and Tarasenko are gone.
Yeah, you got a bunch of good players
Yeah.
because Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas did not take the
They
team
didn't become
leading step
star
forward.
level. Yeah.
They just repeated, "Hey, these are good players. These are not great players."
I don't know what they do. If I was them, I'd do anything possible to get out of Binnington's contract and blow it up. But I don't know how they could get to that. So
I think they just have
feel
too many
stuck. They
forwards.
just feel stuck.
There's just too many. There's too many guys there, and they have too much money committed to bad defensemen.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do. Those 3 first-round picks. If I'm their GM, I'm considering attaching those 3 first-rounders to move on from Colton Parayko, to move on from Nick Leddy, to move on from. I would probably keep Justin Falk.
He's the one you could probably actually move, though, is the thing.
Yeah,
Like,
for a real return
Yeah.
where you're not including assets to try and get rid of that
Yeah.
contract. Yeah. I would try and see what those markets are for those guys, though. Seriously consider them.
would you be interested in Parayko?
In Colorado? No.
No.
how
It's
many
too- it's too
how many
long.
years are left on that deal?
Like 6 or 7.
Oh yeah, that's
I
that's
didn't
too
realize
many.
it was
Okay.
such a long contract.
That's the thing. Otherwise, yes.
If it was like
Okay.
3 or 4,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Because we saw what he looked like when he wasn't asked to be the man.
Yeah.
Yep.
So put him back in that infrastructure and let him do that. I would be very interested. I don't want to pay for the decline.
I don't like that
Yeah.
term, but I like Parayko in the immediate.
I would be a lot more interested in trying to poach one of those forwards. Do they want to move on from a Buchnevich?
Oh, I would kill for Buchnevich.
Do they? What do they feel about Brandon Saad?
I would not mind kicking the tires on Sod again.
Those are 2 guys that I would call about. I'd be curious about Braden Shen. Does he want to come?
He'd be a fun
does
2C,
I know he's
yeah.
31 and he's signed for a long time.
He'd be a
He's
fun
still,
2C.
He's still a good guy, and he brings so many of the elements that Kadri brought without some of the drama.
The red mist level.
Yeah, where you had concerns about Kadri doing something ultra dumb. I would kick the tires and I would ask about Braden Shen. Just me personally.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, even thinking of what became of Barbashev outside of St. Louis for Vegas, and it's interesting what these players could be in a different system. I think that they are not being utilized to their full potential. I think they are sitting around as just some guys in the forward group right now in St. Louis. I think they've lost the plot a little bit. I don't trust them as they're currently constructed, and I could see teams capitalizing on them trying to find the plot and maybe needing to move some of these pieces.
Okay.
Who knew David Perron would be so important to a team's like
that
forward
just fall
success.
apart without.
But also, like, they just got a little old. Like, O'Reilly stopped being able to do that job. You know, Tarasenko stopped being a higher end player. You know, like they just kind of, it just sort of
That's what
naturally
happens.
there.
The slow decline of
Yeah.
a hockey team, basically.
Yeah, and they invested too much money in bad defense.
Yep.
Where they can't, because if they were on short term deals,
You can
where
get out of them.
yeah, you could consider buying a guy out here and there. You could use those 3 first-rounders for St. Louis to aggressively retool.
Yep.
You know, you could go and sign a guy like a Gavrikov in free agency. You could trade for some of these other guys. You know, you
Go
could
try and sign Damon Severson this offseason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could try and make a move like that, but instead they're just stuck because all of those contracts are long term.
All right, we'll get to Winnipeg and Calgary in a second here. I want to do the bottom of the Pacific as well very quickly. Ducks, Sharks, not expecting a ton out of either of those teams this year.
I would call about Hurdle.
That'd be fun. I don't know that the Sharks are super interested in letting him go,
I
but
don't think they would be. But I'd call, and I would at least kick the tires.
got to do your job. If you're not calling, you're not trying. What the hell where are the Canucks? Are they anywhere? Are they seem
They're
stuck in
going to
no
have to
man's
give
land.
guys away. They're gonna give look. Brock Besser is gonna go to Chicago for a second-round pick. I don't know which one of those second-round picks it's gonna be. It's gonna be one of them. That's how I see that ending, because I think Chicago's gonna end up being a sneaky fun team next year, where they're able to load up on some intriguing forwards and they're
That
able
they all
to build.
can flip.
Yeah, and they're able to build a decent enough roster where you're like, they're watchable.
I hope they're not.
Yeah, I mean, it's done, man. They won the
I know.
Bedard sweepstakes,
I know.
and that's where
I
this
know.
is headed.
I know.
So I think they're going to end up being sneaky watchable, just like Arizona was last year.
Maybe. We'll see.
But yeah, the bottom of the Pacific, who cares?
That's mostly where I'm at with the bottom of the Pacific as well. Just not.
Do they want to trade Troy Terry? I'm open to that. Bring him home.
Whatever team you're watching, you can do it on Fubo TV when it comes to ESPN and all of that good stuff. Check them out at FuboTV.com/DNVR. Over 140 channels, not just sports, but they've got television shows and movies too. News, all the good stuff. You can use that QR code on screen or the link. When you do, you get 10% off actually it's 15% off your first month of Fubo Pro. Go check it out. It comes with a 1,000-hour DVR that works for you, so you can jump right in, record whatever you want while you go out to dinner, come back and watch it on replay. Fast forward through all the commercials. Get all the good stuff with Fubo. It's right on your television as well. We all have smart TVs these days, basically. So you get the app, you turn your TV on, Fubo's on, you're watching TV. You don't have to jump through any hoops. It's not anything complicated. Super easy stuff to do. Go check it out. Go get it today at FuboTV.com/DNVR. And then when you're watching Fubo on your couch, crack open a Breck Brew, the official beer of DNVR. You can get 8 different kinds on tap down here at the bar. You can find it everywhere in the United States. Check your local liquor store or the Breck Beer Locator online at breckbrew.com. You can also check out their dope merch on the Breck Brew's website. So go in there, get the good stuff from Breck Brew. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. I think two teams in very different places when you talk about Winnipeg and you talk about Calgary. I want to start with Calgary. On paper, Calgary's supposed to be a good hockey team. They should be a playoff team at least.
Easily.
Sutter's gone. Their front office is getting reorganized.
They need a new head coach.
They got to find one. They're fully committed to Nazem Kadri. They have a bunch of other pieces that, obviously the Huberdeau and Uyghur stuff did not work that well this year. You're hoping a lot of that is some clashing with Sutter. Do they need to do major surgery here, or is this a run it back and expect to get better out of these guys?
In some ways, I don't think they can do major surgery. I think their
That's a fair point.
hands are a little bit tied to some of these contracts, but I am expecting Huberdeau to have a different season from what he had. This was a bit of an anomaly in my eyes, and I hope that it is to some degree. I mean, it is Calgary after all. I'm not putting too much into that, but I do think they are limited in what they're even able to do, but I do think they're going to be significantly better than they were this last season. They had health on their side, which we've talked about, but I think that these pieces are still good pieces. And I'll take a minute to think about if they could make a change where I think it would be best for them. But I think that there is something to be said for playing under a new coach, also benefiting them, even just in the immediate, for what it means in long term, because I think we've watched coaches come in anew and kind of inspire something in the players. Yeah. So who's to say what looks like in year 2 of whatever this new coach ends up being? But if it is someone like a Mitch Love who's promoted from within the organization, it's interesting because I'm sure it doesn't actually provide so much of a shakeup in terms of what they need to do in execution. I think the systems will be very similar and familiar, but I do think just having a new coach at the helm will make somewhat of a difference, and they are going to be a playoff contending team. Now, I'm not going to get ahead of myself and suggest that they're a cup contending team next year, but they absolutely belong in the playoffs in my eyes.
AJ, do you believe in Jacob Markstrom back there?
I think he's better than he was last year.
But how much better is the question?
Yeah. Was he as good? Is he as good as what we saw 2 years ago? I don't think so. But I think it's fair to ask him to be somewhere in between. The thing with Calgary is they're in this really weird position where they have a bunch of really good forward prospects who are like there,
waiting to get their chance at the bit, basically. Yeah.
You have Matt Phillips, you have Jacob Peltier, you have Coronado, you have Connor Zeri. Like, you've got guys that are ready to go. You watched Walker Dewar this year actually be a pretty decent role player for them. We've watched over the last couple of years, they have developed Andrew Mangiapane and Dylan Dubé from their bottom six
real players,
into guys that have actually been pretty important and pretty good for them. But you have two guys in particular that Colorado should be keeping a very close eye on, because Calgary's already capped out.
Yep.
And they have a couple of expiring contracts. They've got to figure some of this out. They don't have to do anything drastic, but you have Mikhail Backlund and Elias Lindholm sitting with one year left on their deal. Lindholm is the better player. He's the more desirable asset. He's the younger one. They're both in their 30s. So you're probably not talking about a long-term solution for Colorado at 2C.
Is that
Mikhail Backlund is probably the easier one to get. He's 34. You would have he's spent most of his career in Calgary taking hard minutes.
These are more trade deadline deals, though, right? Like if Calgary's out of it.
So I think Lindholm is.
Okay.
That said, if you're St. Louis and you offered 2 first-round picks for Elias
hard to
Lindholm
say no,
straight up, Calgary could just be like, we should consider this.
1 year of Lindholm or a super easy reload for us.
Yeah, because there's a very real possibility they're not going to be able to keep those guys. Backlund's next deal will probably be quite a bit lower than the just under $6 million that he's getting paid right now. But if only because he's 34. But that's where you look at those two guys and you say, guys that are down the middle, that can play center, that can take hard minutes, but also have the two-way ability to give you 50 plus points.
A proper defensive 2C.
Yeah, but good enough offensively to be an impact guy.
Right.
And you start to roster bait a little bit, and you throw in Val Nichushkin next to one of those guys, and you're like,
this is the line that's no fun to play against for teams.
This is gonna be quality stuff here, but they're gonna be good enough offensively that they're not gonna be just a black hole.
Yeah,
and so that's where I think that's where I would start if I'm Colorado. I would probably start my offseason phone call to Calgary, to Craig Conroy now, and just say, hey, how open are you guys to moving one of these guys right now? You could definitely, because Calgary's going to want to integrate some of these guys, some of these younger kids into their lineup at some point. So if they don't want that guy down the middle, a guy like Tyler Toffoli, who's always been a good player, but has always been a bad fit in Colorado because of the
Can't
up-tempo.
skate, yeah.
The up-tempo way that they want to play is not great for Toffoli, who's never been a very good skater. You're not interested. You're not going to be able to get Andrew Mangiapane out of there. You're not interested in 4 more years of Blake Coleman.
I don't even know if I'm that interested in Backlund. It'd be Lindholm or nothing for me.
I'm interested in Lindholm. I think you make a great point though about forward depth they have that I think is ready to make the leap now. Peltier
Mitch
being
Love isn't
one
the
of
only
them.
reason the Wranglers are so good.
No, and this is all in my bid to make the Eagles a little bit better. So if Peltier wants to go up to the big leagues full time, I'm cool with it. No, but they do have some players that are ready to graduate.
Yeah.
They've done all they can at the American League level, and that's something
really
for
good at
Calgary
the AHL.
to consider, that they have some options there that will be more cap friendly and can help if they are able then to offload some of what's in the forward group presently to save a little bit of space. I think it would benefit them, and it would benefit other teams. Certainly, it would be a hard decision to part with someone like Lindholm. I think the return has to be very worthwhile.
They are like capped right now, and that's where if you move Backlund, who again, I'm saying him because he's the lesser of the two. He's also the more expensive money wise. So maybe they eat $1 million to help Colorado out, but the Avs moved their first round pick this year for him.
Well, the thing is, I think Calgary could go the other way as well, and I understand there are money conversations that you have to have, but you look at what the Avs did for success. The guy they didn't want to move that they moved on from, Justin Barron. Could Calgary look to move some of those prospects out?
Well, the hard part there is that you're taking guys who are really cheap and moving them for a guy who would be more expensive.
I understand they
don't
need
have
to move money out as well.
They don't have the money to
but-
do that right now.
But
And that's why I'm
in the NHL, if you want to find money, you can find money.
Right, but I'm saying it's easier to make one move than two. And if they were to put a Peltier and a Matt Phillips or Connor Zary, Matt Coronado, one of these guys, if they were to package 2 of them up for a defenseman, or I don't even know what they would want, to be honest with you.
Again, it's a deadline conversation.
They're deep enough
Yeah.
at forward, and they're good enough on defense. There was really no reason. You look at that roster, and you're going, how the hell did this team miss the postseason?
Yep.
There's no really obvious hole there.
Other than just underperformance.
Exactly. It's underperformance because Mackenzie Weegar should be a dude. Jonathan Huberdeau should have been a dude. And these guys were very mediocre in their first year in Calgary, and that's your problem, is you're paying top money to top players who just didn't give you that performance. That's why the coach is gone.
Yep.
But they are capped out for right now, and they have a ton of expiring deals next season. Moving some money out, I think if, for my money, if they were to try and move some of the kids together, it's the dumbest thing they can do.
Because if with the expiring contracts in the next year, they need longer term options that
And
aren't just a 1 year.
If you have 4 of these guys come in on ELCs next year, or the second, a 1 year $800K deal or whatever, you have 4 of these guys replacing them. You can choose to spend money on which guys you prioritize re-signing and still stay competitive at forward.
Yeah, fair
And
enough.
so moving out, and again, I think Lindholm is a deadline deal, and I think Backlund is the guy you could talk them into
This
now.
offseason, yeah.
Because he's 34. They're not. Nobody's looking to give him a long-term deal.
Yeah.
You could give him maybe a multi-year extension, a 2 or 3 year deal at the end of it, depending on how well he plays, where he goes.
Yeah.
But you're not doing it right away. If you get Elias Lindholm, you're going to try and keep him.
Yep.
If you get Backlund, he could be a 1 year. We're just trying to figure this out. And it is Mikhail Backlund for Colorado's first round pick. That's it. Enough? I don't think so. But I don't think it should be a significantly more on top of it. I don't think it's a major. It's not Jean-Luc Foudy. It's not Oscar Olausson. It's not Sean Barons.
It'll be interesting to see how those markets shape up. I do want to move on to Winnipeg, though, a team we've talked about a lot because they're both this offseason and next offseason could reshape a lot of the league depending on what they want to do with Connor Hellebuck, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele. I I don't really have a ton more to say that we haven't already said about Winnipeg. We're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with this team, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have to make decisions.
Yep.
Like they are in the position where they are well built enough that they can get to where they were. They can get
They
back
can
to
make
the
the
wild card
playoffs.
spot.
Yeah.
They can get back into the postseason. Are they going to win a round? They could win a round. It would take everybody just playing better. It would take a little bit of better health. You know, having Cole Perfetti would be nice. But they like to the same. It's the same conversation with Nashville. To what end? Because if they go out and they do that, they decide that, and then Connor Hellebuck, Pierre-Luc
They all
Dubois,
walk,
and Mark
yeah.
Scheifele all leave in free agency, you've lost a 1C, a 2C, and a 1G.
It's almost
you're
a
talking-
0G at that point.
You're talking about the three of the four most valuable positions in all of hockey.
Yep.
First and second line centers and a starting goaltender and a Vezina caliber goaltender. The only thing you're missing is a frontline defenseman that is walking on you at that point.
Which will be Norrisy in a couple of years.
Yeah, he's signed for a long time, so you're fine. But
Until he demands a trade.
well, and
Yeah, if everyone is gone,
exactly.
I mean, his trade. I mean, he's signed for too long. And
I know.
He's gonna have to eat a couple of bad years before he's gonna get allowed to do that. But yeah, totally. You can see where this is ending. Yes, that's the thing with Winnipeg. They need to be bold. Kevin Cheveldayoff has been very calculating. I'm going to nibble around the edges.
Bold is certainly not the word you'd use to describe.
He needs to take big bites this offseason. There needs to be, for me, I've said this before, but if I'm him, I'm calling Buffalo, and I am offering Connor Hellebuck to Buffalo for Devin Levi to try and get the next potential stud at goalie.
Just run it back with Levi.
And then, maybe JJ Paterka or a Quinn or a Krebs, somebody else to come back, because I'm not giving away Hellebuck just for this kid goaltender.
Krebs played his junior hockey there.
Yeah.
We know Winnipeg looks for guys that want reasons to be in Winnipeg.
And they're going to need to replenish forwards when Scheifele and Dubois leave. So, the Dubois thing, you're going to try and, I think they should just try and move him for whatever they can get. Everybody understands kind of the score there that Dubois it sure feels like Dubois
it's
is walking
Montreal
to Montreal
for sure. Yeah.
But again, so what?
Yeah.
You get a year of Dubois. It's the same as getting the Backlund or the Lindholm conversations.
Well, if
you're getting a year out of that guy, and then you're probably, from a Colorado perspective, you're probably losing him.
Well, the
But
thing
if
is,
you go in, if you upgrade your 2C that much, you're in a great position to win another Stanley Cup, and that's the point.
From a Colorado perspective, it gives Winnipeg less leverage in that trade. If everybody knows he's going to Montreal and this is just a rental, it's going to drive his cost down a little bit.
Sure, and it should still get them a first-round pick
For sure.
Because if they were, to
I'm not
trade
saying it's cheap.
If they were to trade him at the deadline, they're getting a first-round pick. They're getting a pretty good prospect.
Yep.
The difference is that you're doing it today.
It's true.
The same. They should do the same thing for Mark Scheifele. Because between Cole Perfetti, between Brad Lambert, I guess if you really want the other geeky brother, he played for the Ice. He's drafted by Arizona.
Yeah.
It's Rutger McGroarty. That was
The
their other
Winnipeg
pick.
teams
Yeah.
all blur together.
Sometimes, yeah. No, it was Rutger McGroarty that I forgot that he was the other first round pick that the Jets had. And between a guy that they have not promoted in Ville Heinola, there's young guys on that roster where you can be like, hey, start to integrate more of the youth into this.
Clear the path. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when Blake Wheeler's contract ends next year, when Nino Niederreiter's contract ends next year, you lose $12 million off of your books at forward. Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello are guys that I think could fetch mid-round picks that they could either flip for players like they did with Niederreiter, players who are signed, who don't have trade protection, that they don't have to convince to come play in Winnipeg, and say, you're already under contract. Ha, gotcha, sucker. Or you sign guys in free agency. You use that money. There's just a lot of different ways they could go about it. And I think if they were smart and they were aggressive, they could get big returns for Scheifele, Dubois, Hellebuck, and they could get reasonable returns for guys like Brendan Dillon and Dylan
They
DeMello.
just have to be willing to let this era end.
And if they were willing to eat $1 million, Brendan Dillon next to Josh Manson would be a really mean third pairing.
I'd rather have DeMello personally.
Well, he's right-handed, and that's why I'm going that way. I would too. DeMello's better. And I would really like it if Brendan Dillon landed in Colorado because Evan hates him, and I don't know why. And I just think that would be very funny after
To go from Zadorov
exactly,
to Dillon for him.
exactly. To go from Zadorov and end up with Brendan Dillon over there, and just be like, nah. The anti-Evan agenda.
Does he love Zadorov?
He
loves it.
I've gotten that impression. I just
Yeah.
haven't heard him say
Loves
it
him.
expressly. Okay.
Yeah, with Zadorov free agent next summer, he's already started being like, bring him back.
Bring him back.
Okay, we do have to wrap up the show very quickly. Edmonton's going to Edmonton.
They've got to give somebody
They have
away.
to shed cap,
They've
yeah.
got $6 million to spend. They've got a bottom six that needs to be rebuilt. And Evan Bouchard is going to get a $4 million bridge deal.
Plus deal. Yep.
So they need to give guys away. Colorado should call about Warren Fogle. He makes $2.75. It's for a year. He fits their style. He would be a very good third line player for them, just like he was a very good third line player in Carolina. That's who he is. It's cheap. 2.75 just isn't very much. And a mid-round pick should do it because they're going to have to give him away. Now, if they could give him away for Sampo Ranta,
I'd do it.
you would prefer something like that than another draft pick. But I don't know that Sampo Ranta would be enough there.
I doubt it would be, but you never know.
I'm just saying, more of the Jack Johnson for Andreas Englund kind of swap where
I understand.
if you could
Player
if
for
there's-
player
If
type
there's a
thing,
guy
yeah.
they like that you'd be comfortable with there, then do it. But you don't want it to be like a Logan O'Connor and Alex Newhook.
No,
like
not
one of those types
yeah,
of guys.
not
Those
a
are-
roster player.
Yeah, those are because you're trying to add to that.
Yep.
You're not trying to replace them.
The Avs prospect pool is in such a weird place where there is such a stark difference between an Oscar Olausson and a Sampo Ranta that I don't think Ranta moves the needle because I'm not sure that he would be viewed as an NHL roster player at the
Yeah.
moment. I don't even know if I could say that for Oscar Olausson, but the ceiling is higher.
Yeah,
And so I could see them saying, no, we don't want a Ranta type. We want a Olausson. But I can't see Colorado being comfortable parting with that. But I think they'd have to if we're looking at like a Warren Fogle type. Look more at an Oscar Olausson type. And I don't know that I'd feel comfortable with that.
This is where not having mid-round picks really hurts
Yeah.
you. And
just don't
you
have
could
those
offer an
assets.
alternative deal. You could say, what about Warren Fogle for Josh Manson?
That's tough too.
I-
But the health obviously is such a concern. It's like if I knew
it's a fair point.
Manson
yeah.
would be more or less healthy and this isn't some lingering thing that's going to be a problem, no way.
Yeah,
But
Avs defense just feels too thin, I think.
If you wanted to balance that money, you could say Brett Kulak and Warren Fogle for Josh
Okay,
Manson.
all
And then
right.
now I
Calm
really
down.
feel like I'm winning over here.
Calm down. If GMs just did whatever you wanted, you'd be a great GM, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. If I could just get them drunk and get them to agree to things.
so why do you hate Kyler Yamamoto again?
So Yamamoto, I think, is a really good. That's another guy that they're going to have to strongly consider moving on from. He makes $3 million, and can he stay healthy? Is he good enough? They're all fair questions about his future.
I don't see his fit in Colorado specifically,
I'm at
but
with
I
it,
see
too.
them moving on from him and another team benefiting from this.
This is where with no Landy next year, you have Lehkonen, McKinnon, Rantanen, Nichushkin, question mark.
Yeah.
So if you put Yamamoto on one of those wings in your top
Let
six,
him fly with some talent, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still need to solve your 2C thing. We know that this has to get solved.
and you could,
But
you get a
don't feel terrible if a Lehkonen or a Nichushkin
Yeah.
is on the other side.
and you throw a
and you get
Lindholm or an
defensively-
O'Reilly center
Exactly.
in
You
between
get
them.
a
Yeah.
defensively sound
Yeah, I wouldn't hate
center.
that. I wouldn't hate that.
Yamamoto on that side makes way more sense. My interest in that goes way, way, way up. My concern is if it doesn't work, you end up with an Alex Newhook, Kyler Yamamoto on your third line, getting
That's just
chewed up.
It's a
by-
liability,
too
right?
easy to
by
play
Seattle
against.
coming at you,
Yeah.
with a heavy forecheck where those two guys are like, please, sir, don't do this to me. And that's my concern is if it doesn't work, there's no backup plan.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, just get a third line guy in Warren Fogel.
Go solve your 2C and you deal with it.
Yeah, you can figure out the rest of this. Like, you can figure out a wing along the way. That's where the Jonathan Drouin thing comes in. You know, where you're like, oh, well, if we get that guy for $1 million, you know, that's where the Alex Galchenyuk dream lives on.
Let's be real. It's easier to find a winger. It's something you could do with the deadline a little bit easier.
Which I think they will need to do,
Yeah.
but the 2C obviously being the priority.
It's the number one thing that you want to figure out, but you also do look at some of these teams. We kind of glossed over Vancouver, but Vancouver's going to have to give guys away. Brock Besser, Connor Garland. Obviously, Connor Garland isn't an option for the Avs with how much we know Nathan McKinnon hates him. And it goes well beyond the helmet tossing
back to
thing.
their days at St. Mary's from
That's when
what it sounds
Yanni
like.
when Yanni Gord came up as like, ooh, could he fit in Colorado? I think they hate him, at least presently. This could be something that maybe they get over if they're playing alongside him, but
Is that I hate playing against him, or is it I hate him?
it felt personal, especially between him and Byram. It felt like something very personal was born from that I'd be curious
I
to
wonder
see.
what that's about.
I tried to ask him, didn't get a clear answer. Honestly, I think it's the intensity of the
Interesting.
series. I don't think there's this history there.
This is one where it's like, is this like Keegan Kolesar's not allowed in the locker room? Like, you know, like
Yeah.
Connor Garland's not allowed. They vetoed Max Domi. Like
Yeah.
the room was like, no.
Which is an interesting thing for Dallas, actually. Sorry, I'm all over the place right now.
No, totally.
Like, what's
It's
Dallas
fine.
going to do about Max Domi? But,
Let him go. They can't.
well, so where does he go?
Chicago.
Everyone that was
Just back.
complaining
Yeah.
about missing on Max Domi, are we really disappointed?
I'm not.
I don't think we
once
can
we found
be.
out that the locker room
Right.
said no, you're just kind of like, look, those guys know best.
If they said no, then they said no.
Yeah.
There's
No,
no.
and you're losing a guy who's not even staying where he went.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
why would you mess up your long-term locker room for 20 games of it, dude? Like, it's
well,
not
and
worth
like,
it.
you probably don't mess it up long term, but it's also like, you've built such a good culture. Why
Yeah.
would you tinker with it with a guy that you know is going to be a toxic element?
Yep.
There's no, there were just, that upside just wasn't like, okay, so maybe you get to the second round.
Long story short, the Avs should be looking to pick the bones wherever they can.
Yeah, they need to kind of a little vulture mentality where they look at, you know, how did they get Devon Taves? They saw a cap strap team that was going to have to move on from a good player.
Yep.
A team that was going to have to give. This is the same thing why I keep going back to Sharon Govich in New Jersey,
And Hurdle.
who was a healthy scratch at the end of the year, who's an RFA, and who is a guy that's probably going to be underpaid on his next contract versus what he should produce if he gets put into a good situation. Like, those are the guys. That is the archetype that they should be looking for. You look at Edmonton and you say Warren Fogel's in his prime. He signed for a cheap number. He can do a job that we need somebody to do and fit in with us stylistically. And the team that has him has to shed money somehow. They've got to do something. And instead of we're going to trade RNH, giving Warren Fogel away for a mid-round pick is much safer, which is what GMs do. So they need to be vultures and they need to be very strategic. There's a lot of teams out west that are up against it, which is where the Landy money comes in very handy for this year, is that they could splash a little bit of cash where they need to on expiring
Do
contracts.
1 year things.
Exactly.
And what's fun about this conversation is we've only talked about picking from the carcasses in the West without even beginning to talk about the East. There is a lot of room for the Avs to be far more aggressive in this offseason. I
And-
anticipate it.
When in bringing up the East, one of the other considerations is how many assets all those teams at the top paid
all moved
at
west,
the trade
yeah.
deadline, where
That were
they're not
rentals.
they're going to be looking to replenish some assets in some ways,
Yeah.
like a first round pick, for example.
Yeah.
Where if there are openings there, you know, can the Avs find a deal with New Jersey where they send a first round pick for Sharon Govich and another guy, and you end up with, you know, getting a depth defenseman or something else like.
Well, I think you look,
That's where they need to get
you look
creative.
at the teams on the fringes there too. Like, hey, Washington has to make some decisions about where their future is headed. It's,
Totally.
I think they probably won't blow it up because of OV, but
Right, but we also saw they weren't afraid at the deadline. They weren't afraid to make a hard decision when they had to.
yep.
That's why their whole defense that was expiring either got friggin' traded or re-signed.
Yep.
They made decisions. They talked to the guys and said who wants to be here, who's willing to stay at a number that we're comfortable with. And that's how my Nick Jensen dream died.
It's the way it goes. All right, we're going to get out of here for today. We appreciate all y'all hanging out with us and dealing with our sound issues at the start. Tomorrow, it's Megan and Jesse. So I'm sure I think you guys are talking some Leaf stuff, right? That's what it sounds
we'll have
like.
Dave McCarthy. He's one of the NHL correspondents for Toronto. Come on and talk with us about what's going on over there.
There you go.
We've got Chris Peters will come on. Is going to be on the show Friday to talk NHL draft with us.
Fun.
We're going to start getting into specific names for the Avs at 27.
Yep.
We're going to use the next 5 weeks to start to hone in on guys that you should start to love just for them to trade the pick the morning of the draft.
Yep. Can they trade it like 3 weeks out so he can just be done?
No, they're going to do it.
It never works that way.
Morning
I know.
of, my man.
They traded it while I was in the airport last year. So anyway, we appreciate all y'all hanging out, and we will talk to you on the next one.